Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and what I'm going to do is this is going to be the first video where we're going to discuss Gatsby. Gatsby is a static site generator, and this is becoming sort of the new sort of hot thing, especially when you're trying to think of something that's fast, secure, and easy to maintain, especially if you're talking about your small business clients who don't necessarily need a big sprawling database. Like even a WordPress install might be overkill, because with the WordPress install you still have to have the SQL database and installed on a server somewhere. The page each time has to be rendered on that server before being sent as a request to the response, and that all takes time. So what if we could eliminate the need for the database, eliminate the need for the server-side rendering, and make everything just faster? That's sort of what this whole idea, why static site generators have kind of, or the idea of a static site has made a comeback. Now, this is not like the static site from like back in the day where you would just put everything in your HTML file and it was just a site up on the web and you'd just have to edit it by hand every single time. Your modern static site generators are tools that will dynamically get data and do all the dynamic things we want, but it renders a static page in the end. So the way Gatsby is going to work is that we're going to go behind the scenes and configure all our data sources. And once we configure all our data sources, then we're able to refer to those data sources using a query language called GraphQL, which was created by Facebook. And then that'll pull the information on the individual pages where we want, or the templates of those pages. And then we'll create the design of the website using another thing created by Facebook, React. And then what happens is that then we'll run a build. And what Gatsby does is that using those GraphQL queries, it'll go into all that data we configured, go in there, pull that data, plop it into our templates created with React, and at the end, churn out a fully rendered website that we then would go deploy on something like Netlify. We'll also discuss Netlify CMS and its role in the big picture by the end of these videos. Okay, so, cool. Now where am I getting my data from? I could get my data from anywhere. I could go get it from like a headless CMS, like a contentful. I could go get it from an API. I could go get it from Markdown files. So imagine this, a blog. So you might have seen this with other static site generators like Jekyll, Hugo, Gridsome, etc. Where basically the idea is, instead of having all your blog posts being stored in a database, which requires you to have a server that serves a database, you could just have them in Markdown files. And then what happens is the static site generator will look through your directory structure, find all the Markdown files, it'll know how to parse them to treat them as a blog post, and then just renders them as blog posts. So in this case, you've cut yourself out of having the need for a database. You cut yourself out of the need of having to pull the information out of the database and then render it onto a page. It just reads the Markdown file and then plops it into your template. So, and that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to just do a simple Markdown blog. But that means you don't need a server, so that cuts the cost of hosting. The only piece you would need is some sort of content management system, and that's where Netlify will come in later. They created a CMS, a content management system, that meaning a visual way to manage your content for like your clients who don't want to be editing files on GitHub, for them to be able to manage as a backend visual GUI to using these static site generators, whether it's Hugo, Jekyll, Gatsby, or whatever. Netlify can provide you that CMS on the back. So that's really cool when you really think about it. You can get the site up quickly, it'll run fast, it'll be secure, and then you can design a nice dynamic single page application on the front end that pulls information post words, but it's still all very fast. So that's really cool. So that's sort of the high end of Gatsby. Now we want to create a new Gatsby project. So I'm going to go to my Gatsby folder, which is right over here. I'm going to copy the full path because I'm going to go cd into there. We'll change into that directory. Paste. Okay, we're in that directory. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is actually install Gatsby on your node. So if you don't have Node.js installed on your computer, you need to go get that first. So head over to nodejs.org and download Node. So first you have to do is install it. I've already installed it in the past, but it would be npm install g for global, and then Gatsby -CLI. This installs the tool, so that way you can create new Gatsby projects whenever you need to. So you'd run that, install it, and once that's installed successfully, then you can just go to whatever directory and type in Gatsby new, meaning a new Gatsby project, even though I typed Gatsby wrong. New Gatsby. Okay, then you can put in the name of the site, and then it'll use the default template. Although there are several templates for Gatsby inside. If you go to gatsbyjs.org, you can look through all the templates, and they have all sorts of templates to save you time out of the gate. But I kind of want to show you how all this is done from scratch. So Gatsby new, and we're just gonna say this is, we'll call this Markdown blog. Okay, or we'll just keep it all lowercase Markdown blog. Okay, and then that's going to start building out our project. Okay, and that's going to take a little bit. So I'll show you the previous thing I did here, AM blog, just to give you a tour. So you're going to end up with a folder structure that kind of is like this. And what you're going to end up finding in there is you have your source folder. Okay, and your source folder is going to have several. Now, if you've used Next.js, you'll probably be familiar with how the pages folder works. It basically treats every JavaScript file or every component file you have in here as a separate page, as a separate route. So technically, like instead of index.html, you'll have index.js. So if you're familiar with Next.js and how Next.js works, that's pretty much all there. That's literally how all this works. Okay, you have your images folder, so you can put any images you need. And then if you want to make individual components that are not like a full website, like a full page in your website, but just like maybe like a navigation component, and this is all done in React, so you're all doing this in React, that would be in here, okay, in your components folder. Cool. So that's the basic file structure and source. Then you have the public folder. This is generally where all your static stuff renders when you're done. So basically you will, when we're all said and done, we'll hit build, and then it'll basically build it there. Cool. And let's see here, what else we got here. Gatsby browser.js. Let me see if I remember what that is again. My Gatsby's browser API is in this file. I haven't had to use that yet, so we don't need to worry about that at the moment. Gatsby config, this is important. Okay, this is where you configure some of your any plugins you use. So you're gonna need different plugins to access Markdown files, to access APIs, to access CMSs. So you would configure your plugins in this area here. And then each plugin generally has its own documentation on how to use it. There's also kind of environmental variables here, like this here, where if I put that in here, this plugin itself is a node where you can pull data from. So this site metadata item here is actually information you can pull in through GraphQL and use throughout your website. So that's neat. Now Gatsby node.js, every like clump of information is referred to as a node. And there might not be a plugin for every node you need, or every clump of information you need. So the Gatsby node API allows you to kind of define your own nodes of data as needed. And then there's a whole bunch of documentation on like the code. What I did here is I had to create my own node for an API I wanted to bring in, because I could not figure out the API plugin for the life of me, so I just built the node. Which is pretty straightforward. It's just basically gets the information from the API, and then you kind of do a loop rendering each one into a node. We're not going to go there for this particular lesson because we want to make a Markdown blog. Okay, and then this is for server-side rendering APIs. So if you were going to do any server-side rendering, you could do that in there. Again, it's in the documentation. Here is the README. Okay. So basically, when this is done installing down here, okay, we'll be able to kind of run some certain commands. So we will go into the folder and run Gatsby develop. Gatsby develop will kick off the development server, so that way we can edit and see those changes live. Okay, and it'll start running and all that fun stuff. And then when we're done, now let's just walking through what all the folders are. So actually, let's do that. This file is where Gatsby expects to find. So this is the Gatsby browser file, where Gatsby finds to find any usage of the Gatsby browser API. These allow customization, extension of default Gatsby settings affecting the browser. Got it. This is where Gatsby extends default Gatsby settings affecting pieces of the site build process. SSR, Gatsby settings. Okay, so we kind of said all that. And then of course you have your package JSON folder. Here are all the different dependencies. Okay, and there's a lot of Gatsby plugins and source and whatnot. So usually when you see like different plugin names, so like Gatsby transformer remark, it's like it'll transform a particular input into something else. Like source means, hey, we're gonna create a new source of something. A plugin could be any of those things. but they always have some sort of naming like that. And again, we have React in there because we're going to be using React. And that's pretty much it. That was just my reading for that particular project. And okay. Looks like it might have had some issues installing. We'll explore once this thing stops being frozen. But that's essentially like the layout. So essentially what we need to do is we're going to need to define sort of where our markdown files are, tell it to read those markdown files. Okay, yeah, sure, keep waiting. So let me go to that. So we can see the markdown piece. So I'll just kind of bring it up in the documentation. Oh wait, no, it's unfrozen now. Cool. So let's take a look at our new folder here. Node module source. Yeah, no, something went funny. There's a lot of the folders are. Oh no, that's right. Let's see here. Let's compare. Yeah, .cache.git. That's because those are from me installing Git. The public and the cache folders are really from when I run the build. Node modules folders is fine. The public folder. So the public folder. Oh yeah, that's from the build. So technically, yeah, that should be fine. So we should be able to continue, but I'm gonna let it keep installing. So we guys, and then once you're done installing and I'm done installing, we'll meet back up here for the next video and we'll discuss sort of the next step.